TFA fam, what is going on? Welcome into the wild card rankings for running backs for your NFL playoff fantasy challenges, however you're setting them up. It is Cody and Kev coming at you. We already covered quarterback, already covered tight end. Tonight, like I said, we're going to get into running back. If you were watching this, before we dive into it real quick, NFL playoff challenge. If you want in, the winner of that challenge is going to get an autographed Miles Sanders jersey. If you want your shot, we only have like 10 people in it right now. We have 1,000 subscribers. There's only 10 of you in there. Really good odds for a free, no strings attached Miles Sanders autographed jersey. So if you want in, hit us up in the email at the bottom, the fantasyauthority1@gmail. That's the easiest way, most simple for all of us involved. If you need to be difficult, you can hit us up on social media if you would like to do it that way. But email is the quickest and easiest way. So again, you have a 1 in 10 shot as of right now of getting a Miles Sanders jersey for literally playing a playoff challenge. So hit us up. We'll get that to you. It's on NFL.com, and you'll find all the rules and the setups and all that over there. It's going to be a lot of fun. Looking forward to it. Please do not let Cav or myself win this. Don't do it. Jump in. Beat us. Please. I don't want to hold on to this. We were stressing for so long to get these autographed jerseys. Now we have them. We can't give them away to you guys. What are you doing? What are you doing? All right, let's jump into it, Kev. Let's talk about the running back rankings for the wild card weekend. I know we have some similar thoughts here. I know we have some guys that we both want to touch on. I'll touch on these guys real quick. We both have the same top two with Henry and Kamara. Then you have Dobbins, Chubb, JT, David Montgomery, Cam Akers, Chris Carson, Ronald Jones, Antonio Gibson, Kareem Hunt, and James Conner for your top 12. After my top two, Jonathan Taylor, J.K. Dobbins, Nick Chubb, Monty at 6 for me as well. Chris Carson, Antonio Gibson, Cam Akers, Rojo, Connor, and J.D. McKissick rounding things out in the top 12. I just wanted to touch on JT and Dobbins really quickly. Both of these guys are super close. The reason why I have JT a little bit higher is because his matchup definitely isn't as good as Dobbins, but it wouldn't surprise me in the least to see Jonathan Taylor double up the opportunities that Dobbins is going to see. You know, Dobbins has obviously been making the most of his opportunities, especially over the last couple of weeks. He's been playing really well. But JT has just been on an absolute heater over the last 5 weeks. He's second in the NFL in rushing yards, only behind Derrick Henry. So I like JT a lot, and I think if Indy wants to win this game, they're going to need to rely on the running game, keep Josh Allen and that offense off the field as much as they can. I really don't think they want to get into a shootout with the Bills. So, like I said, that's why I have JT just slightly ahead. And then Dobbins, pretty simple. Like I said, he's been turning it up over the past couple of weeks as well. That Titans defense that we've been talking about has just been absolutely trash all year, giving up the 12th most rushing yards to running backs on the year, and they're giving up the 7th most over the last 3 weeks. So I really like Dobbins here. And then honestly, man, I don't know how you feel about the rest of these guys, but honestly, once you get past like Chubb, really, like, I'm not too interested in any of these guys. Like Montgomery's hanging out at 6 just based on volume alone. Kind of same thing with Chris Carson. You know, obviously I have both Washington running backs here in my top 12. I just don't think they're going to be able to afford to take either of those guys off the field. Hopefully we see more 2 running back sets out of them. And like I said, it's volume after that. With Akers, he got all the work that he can handle last week. Didn't get it done on the ground, but performed pretty well through the air. I think had like over 50 receiving yards. James Conner, I think we're both on the same page. We think that the Steelers are going to control this game. So maybe just game script, although the Steelers' run game has just been putrid all year, more or less. So I'm not too high on Conner this week. Obviously, you aren't either. And then McKissick, especially if you're playing in a full PPR league, it wouldn't surprise me to see McKissick second in targets on this team behind, you know, obviously either McLaurin or Logan Thomas, especially if Alex Smith plays this whole game out. So why don't you touch on some of these RB1s, and then we'll move on to, I guess, some of the RB2s. That it's gross over there. So let's touch on these and then we'll jump over there and wrap it up.
Yeah, first I just want to hit on a couple of the guys that you already mentioned really quickly. I think what worries me a little bit about guys like J.K. Dobbins and Jonathan Taylor. Listen, one with J.K. Dobbins, like he's kind of touchdown dependent because he's just not getting the opportunities as a true workhorse back. Now, there are some things to like, but I mean, so right now, the Ravens have the highest implied point total with 29.25 on this slate of games. They are also 3.5-point road favorites against the Titans. Well, I think this sets up as a great matchup against the Titans defense. Like I said, it's hard to really ignore the boom-bust nature that is J.K. Dobbins. He has only clipped 14 carries 3 times all season and only has 1 reception since week 11. So he's just not being utilized in the passing game either. So that does concern me a little bit. You know, I think he scored a touchdown now in 6 straight games as well. But no matter, I mean, I think Dobbins will have to win with his efficiency because he's currently right now 3rd in yards created per touch, 11th in yards created, 18th in evaded tackles, 4th in breakaway run rate, and 1st in true yards per carry. And not to mention, the Titans defense has allowed the 7th most fantasy points to position, 11th most rushing yards, 6th most touchdowns, and the 3rd most receiving touchdowns on the season. So obviously it's a great matchup. But if he does not find the end zone, that would be my one concern with playing J.K. Dobbins. I think he's a little bit more boom or bust because if he doesn't find the end zone and he really has no receiving role whatsoever, and that's always my worry with playing Derrick Henry is, you know, with Derrick Henry, if he gets game scripted out and they have to force to throw the ball, like I think that is a problem. And we have to talk about it with J.K. Dobbins as well. As good as the matchup is for him, like that is something that I think people should be taking into consideration with J.K. Dobbins. And if you feel like that in whatever league you're playing in, if he could be kind of chalky per se, then I think maybe going a different direction and hoping that he doesn't score a touchdown, because as long as he doesn't, then I think J.K. Dobbins just isn't worth the price. So, or, you know, of playing him. So, and then with Jonathan Taylor, it's kind of the same thing for me. I think this is a game where they are 7.5-point underdogs, you know, against the Bills. And that's a problem for Jonathan Taylor because I think if that happens, if they fall behind, he's not going to get that true workhorse back role that we've been seeing from him because they have been playing with the lead. Since week 11, though, you look at Jonathan Taylor, that's when he's kind of broken out, right? Prior to that, he was like running back 22. Since that point, he's basically been like a top 5 back where he's rushed for 741 yards, which is 2nd most in the NFL, 7 rushing touchdowns, 3rd most, and averaged 6.2 yards per carry. And he's finished the season with almost 1,200 yards, 11 touchdowns. There's a lot to like there with Jonathan Taylor, and he's going to be somebody that is super hot. A lot of people are going to want to play in this matchup. And let's face it, Buffalo hasn't been great against running backs either. They've allowed the 13th most fantasy points position, 8th most touchdowns, 14th most rushing yards. But like I said, my main concern is they fall behind, and the Colts are 7-point dogs on the road. Like, that's a problem for Jonathan Taylor. And I don't think he's going to, and that's where you probably see a lot more Naheem Hines usage here if that happens. And the Bills are a team that they're not going to let off the gas. They're not a team that gets up. Like, they throw the ball at the highest clip among all these teams that are remaining in the playoffs. They throw it 62% of the time, whether they're ahead or behind. So they're not going to let off the gas here and just all of a sudden start running the ball and stuff like that. So I think those are concerns I think people should be keeping in the back of their mind with guys like Jonathan Taylor and J.K. Dobbins for this week. Now, with Nick Chubb, I love Nick Chubb this week, and I think he's going to go underrated here in this matchup against the Steelers because people are going to continue to look at the Steelers and think the Steelers are still a great run defense, and they just haven't been. I don't think in your leagues where you're playing, if you can all play the same lineup, I don't think as many people are going to be playing Nick Chubb as they're going to be playing probably Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, and I think it's a way to get a little bit different with him. Over the last 4 weeks, they've allowed 147 rushing yards per game, you know, and we just saw this matchup last week where Chubb rushed 14 times for 108 yards and a touchdown. On the season, Nick Chubb has been fucking dominant this year. In just 12 games, he's rushed for nearly 1,100 yards and 12 touchdowns, and he's first in yards created per touch, 3rd in yards created. He's also averaged a crazy 6.1 yards per carry against at least 8 men in the box. So, like, doesn't matter what teams do. Teams are going to try to shut him down, and they just can't. Like, Nick Chubb is a fucking god. Right? Like the dude's a monster, and he's done it on limited opportunities. He's not a guy that goes out there and gets 60, 70, 80% of the snaps. He goes out there and plays usually 50, 55% of the snaps because Kareem Hunt also gets opportunity. So I love Nick Chubb in this matchup against Pittsburgh. And you can definitely count on some goal line opportunities as well. He has scored, I think, a touchdown in like 5 or 6 straight weeks as well. So I like Nick Chubb. I think is in a way to get a little bit different. David Montgomery, initially when I first started thinking about him, I actually think I could actually have him a little higher, maybe ahead of Jonathan Taylor here, because of the Saints have really started to struggle a little bit against the run as well. Some of it's been because of how aggressive they are, and they shoot the gaps, and their teams are able to get by them. But if you look over the last 4 weeks, they've also struggled against the run. We saw now some of that is the Philly game where Jalen Hurts also rushed for 100 yards against them. But we saw the Chiefs rack up a bunch of rushing yards against them, and their team that hasn't really been able to do that. You look the Vikings game, they allowed almost 100 yards rushing in that game, and the only reason they probably didn't really get there was because of how the Vikings trailed in that game and had to play keep up the entire time, so they weren't able to run the ball as much as they wanted to. So they have struggled a little bit against the run in recent weeks. So I do think with David Montgomery's usage and the fact that this guy is getting 20 to 25 touches just about every game and his heavy usage in the passing game, I think you could make a case for him over Jonathan Taylor and over at J.K. Dobbins because of how much he's utilized as an every down back. While the matchup still is not great because the Saints have still, I still bet more often than not the Saints rush defense is pretty good, but his usage in the passing game is something that I think stands out to me. The other guys, Cam Akers, I have him at 7. Like, I was surprised that they gave him over 20 touches last week in a game. Now, he wasn't efficient with them. I think he only had 34 total yards on 20 touches. Obviously, that's terrible. But if they can get Jared Goff back in this game, Seattle is a team that you could run the football against. So with that usage, I think, you could be looking at a guy like Cam Akers. I really want to love Chris Carson here, but they continue to want to utilize other backs. He's not seeing a major workhorse role. He is utilizing the passing game. I think he's like 4th in targets over the last 4 games. So I don't mind Chris Carson. Other than that, the other guys, I know Ronald Jones going against the Washington football team. I just can't do it. Antonio Gibson has looked impressive, continues to play well, coming off that toe injury that he had. But regardless, this is a terrible matchup against the Bucs. And then, like you mentioned with James Conner, the dude just doesn't get any involvement whatsoever in this backfield. Even though he's playing a lot of snaps, like his path to really being relevant here is going to be utilized in the passing game because over the last 2 games that he's played, week 16 and week 17, 5 touches or 5 carries, and then week 17 he had 9 carries in those 2 games. Now those were 2 games that they were trailing, but regardless of that, he is being utilized as a pass catcher. He's seen 13 targets over the last 2 games, 10 receptions, 65 yards each of those games. So if he can find the end zone, maybe he's a guy that you could look at. But I just think it's too volatile of an option to go to James Conner. I just think there's so many better options here at these top 12 running backs. In most leagues, you're probably not going to, if you're in a league where you're actually like drafting a team for the entire playoffs, maybe you could get down to some of these guys. But outside of Naheem Hines, I do think Naheem Hines and probably J.D. McKissic both are kind of sneaky guys here in both these matchups just because of their pass catching roles here. And they're both guys that could end up seeing much more volume than what we were expecting because of the roles in the passing game. But past that, I don't think you can realistically rely on them for this week. And somebody that you really want to be rostering in a league where if everybody's allowed to draft the same guys. Now, if you're not, then I think it's a little bit different. That's like Devin Singletary and Zach Moss for the Bills. I'm just not playing them. The Colts continue to be an elite run defense on this season. I think they've only over the last 4 weeks they've allowed like 56 rushing yards per game or something ridiculous like that. So I'm not playing either one of those guys. Like I mentioned, the Bills are a team that wants to throw the ball. So the rest of these guys, there's nothing there. Like I said, if you're in a league where you're drafting, maybe, but other than that, that's all I can do.
Yeah, I now that I'm looking at my list, I should probably have Latavius Murray up over Singletary. And outside of that, once you get past Hines, Hunt, Edwards, and Latavius Murray for me, there's really no reason to drop down to any of those guys. Like you said, unless you're drafting a team and you can't use the same players. Other than that, I really don't think there's much to talk about here with the RB2s. You basically have it the same on your side as I do mine, or at least you could basically just take these names, put them in a hat, jumble them up, and if you have to play them, cross your fingers. Best of luck to you. That's really all we have to touch on with the RB2. So as we wrap this up, again, do not forget, first of all, hit that subscribe and like button if you are new to the channel. First of all, welcome. Thank you. Second of all, email us at fantasyauthority1@gmail.com. We're doing the playoff challenge. There is a jersey on the line. Only 10 of you in there, over 1,000 subscribers. Don't make this easy on whoever wins it. Jump in. Let's get some competition going. Let's have some fun with it. So until next time, we'll talk to you guys soon. Good luck this weekend. Any questions, drop them in the comments, and we'll be happy to help you out.